keeper stayed up here. Into the box it goes, and the keeper's won it! Oh my word! Flick on from Kwame Thomas finds Barra! Oh my word! Josh Barra has his moment! Scott for Notts County! Saved by Foster!
Ali looking for a shot, and he scores!
Cropper does get great distance on it as expected! They've done it! What a ball! Fondorp is in there, but that's it! Has it gone all the way in? This is absolutely incredible!
Welcome back to another edition of the podcast, and tonight is our Game Week 41 National League preview and predictions. As always, I'm joined by my partner for tonight's show, Paul Franklin. Paul, firstly, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very well. Thanks, Luke. Very well. Looking forward to Saturday. We've got a big game on the horizon at the Vale. So, the anticipation of that is been building between Stones fans. And, you know, we went to watch them play Yeovil last night. And it was a bit of a nothing match, really. Yeovil deserved their win, I think. And, most eyes were on Saturday.
Yeah, I think we were speaking about it last week. I think Wealdstone, the job they've done in the last couple of weeks, they're more or less safe now, aren't they? And of course, I think from Yeovil's perspective, maybe it was a case of them wanting it more. Of course, there was slight danger of them getting sucked into a relegation battle. But of course, this podcast is sponsored by Cards Accepted. The first £250 in transactions are free of any fees. No contracts or monthly fees. As always, you can scan the QR code in the top right-hand corner of your screen to get directly to their page. I was looking at, of course, the scores from Saturday in terms of the Predictions League. I believe you beat me. Was it 10-8, I think, overall in the end? I think I had Scunthorpe to drop points away at Braintree, and I'd have picked up another point there. And, of course, Scunthorpe scored in the last minute. But no, not a bad week for both of us. But I suppose, once again, it's you who takes the win. Yeah,
it's we're coming into the crucial part of the season here, Luke, like the playoffs, running in and coming into form at the right time. Surprised myself. I think I've got a couple of results actually bang on the money, but and obviously York we could pick a number of, one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you went with 4, I went with 5, and they got 4. So it's there seems to be a little bit more of an even sort of matchup this week, so a little bit more difficult, I think, to predict, especially with some of the results we've seen over the last couple of weeks, slightly indifferent. So we'll see how we go with the predictions this time. It looks like Luke has frozen. So, Luke, are you there? Nothing from Manchester, guys. Nothing from Manchester. The Wi-Fi looks like it's given up on him at university. Oh, here we go. Is he going to come back? Unfortunately, I don't have any access to the messages and what have you that pop up, so I can't move this on a lot, to be fair to you guys. So there's movement. Here he is.
I'm back. This university, it never used to happen back in Yorkshire. It's something to do with Manchester. Yeah, university's not helping me out with the Wi-Fi at all. So I do apologise to everyone and to you as well, Paul. What were we talking about again? I've forgotten, to be honest.
The predictions for this week, I was saying, is looking a little bit more even in terms of the fixtures. So it's like a hard one to pick, but we'll see how we go.
Yeah, we certainly will. Let's take a look at the live chat then. We've had Jason, who's in tonight, of course, a York fan. Even though, well, it's been an interesting week for York. Yeah, a very weird midweek set of fixtures in terms of, York and Rochdale. York losing to Gateshead, who, to be fair to Gateshead, were good value for the win. Everyone will focus on York and how poor they were, but I think Gateshead made them poor on the evening, to be honest. When I've seen the highlights back, I thought Gateshead, as I've mentioned, were very good value for the win. And, usually even when you catch York on an off day, you're going to struggle.
Oh, Luke, don't do this again.
Rochdale. You what, sorry?
You went all frozen again. I thought you were going to go.
Oh, phew. No, to be fair, I won't be surprised if it happens again. I can't lie to everyone's watching when I'm in this university building, but I'll be back at home very soon, so it'll be a lot easier then. But obviously Rochdale as well, them dropping points, being 2-0 up as well, away from home at Scunthorpe. That must be so frustrating from a Rochdale perspective. There was an opportunity to go 5 points clear there, have that little bit of a cushion between them and York. And it feels like, for me, they've thrown it away. Scunthorpe deserve credit for coming back. But, when you're leading after 60 minutes, you'd expect to be able to go on and claim all 3 points if you wanted to go on to win the title. And York fans will be buzzing about that. But not the best of midweeks for either side. But I think both will be happy that their title contender has, of course, lost. We've had Lee in tonight as well. He said, "Your evening, lads. Welcome to the stream." Hartlepool fan who's in up the pools. Yeah, Hartlepool with a strong win away at Morecambe in midweek, coming from 2-1 down as well. All of a sudden now, we've kind of ruled Hartlepool out of getting in the playoffs ever since that defeat to Halifax. And they've had 3 wins on the spin, and it's actually now in their hands to overtake Halifax. And if we're considering Halifax as a playoff contender, then surely that means that Hartlepool have to be seen as a contender as well.
Yeah, 100%. And Southend are going to be kicking themselves, only getting 1 point out of the last 6 at the point, at the time where you need to just build that momentum and stick in there. And like we said, Luke, we've been talking about, that 7th place, really. I mean, Forest Green a little bit. That 7th place is up for grabs, and it doesn't feel like any of the teams really want to grasp it and take it. With Halifax, did well, 3 wins on the spin, then they go and lose. And whereas Hartlepool of the last 5, of the last 5, 3 of them have been wins, and they're the last 3, and all of a sudden they're the ones building momentum. So are we looking at Hartlepool being the Southend of last year and push into the playoffs last knock-ins? Southend have got, I know they've got games in hand. They've got an FA Trophy semi-final on the weekend, which is going to be another game that they're going to have to catch up on. So, the pressure's on them a little bit. I'm not sure they're performing as well as they wanted to. And Halifax, from your perspective, Luke, must be kicking themselves a little bit not to take advantage the other night and against Carlisle. Difficult fixture, 100% difficult fixture. But, they could have seen that if they gained that 2 more points, all of a sudden they're 2 points ahead of Southend in the playoff places. So I think you're right. Hartlepool are the ones now to watch. It's, Woking are way behind that. So that top 9 are looking for, the top 7 spots from now. And it'd be an interesting one. Paul's got at the weekend.
They're not playing.
They're not playing. They must have.
It would be actually Wealdstone.
Oh, so okay, yeah.
Tuesday now.
So it's all of a sudden, Halifax going to be playing one more than Paul's, and so. Yeah, interesting from that perspective, and they're showing form at the right time.
They certainly are. I'm still unsure. I couldn't see Hartlepool getting, I think, out of the 3 or even 4. I think Hartlepool are a side for me that I'm the least confident about, because I just think over the course of the season they've been so inconsistent, particularly at home. Overall, in my opinion, I think Halifax have got a lot more momentum. They're playing very well, whereas Hartlepool, they'll win three games and they'll lose a few to sides that they shouldn't lose to. This is what lets them down, is dropping points to sides that they shouldn't lose to. But, they're still within a shout. And, if you're a Hartlepool fan, you're getting very optimistic, particularly with new ownership as well, which has probably given them a little bit of a boost as well. And as for Southend, they'll be frustrated, particularly when they saw that Halifax had lost the night before. Of course, they still managed to pick up a point. They were 1-0 down until, I believe, the 88th minute against an informed Woking side. Just on Halifax from me, I was very confident going into that game that we would actually get 3 points against Carlisle. And if I'm being honest, people will call me a little bit biased here. I thought Halifax should have gone on to win that game. I thought we were the better side. Carlisle defended very well, which is a massive plus for them, because we know that's probably been the area where, they've been the weakest all season, yet they defended really well. But I think throughout the 90 minutes, it was Halifax who probably edged it with the chances, kept more of the ball, and win the opponent's half more than Carlisle threatened us. But, Carlisle, as I've mentioned, have got individuals that can hurt you. They don't have to be playing well, but they've got players like Ajiboye, Linney, even Armstrong in there that, can just turn it on like that for a second. And I think a lack of concentration was what cost us. And, of course, Linney went on to score. But it is what it is. We have to move on. I see Scunthorpe now as a must-win. I think if we lose that, then I'm looking at the remaining fixtures and I'm just thinking it's going to be too much of an ask. You'll have Southend who will have 2-3 games in hand on us then, and there'd be a point above us with 5 games remaining for us. I just think that'd be too hard for us to be able to overtake them. And of course, Hartlepool would have 2 games in hand, and you're expecting 2 games them to overtake us as well. So I think Saturday for me is a do or die for Halifax, if I'm being honest, after Tuesday night. We've had someone else who's coming to the chat and said, "Evening all, welcome to the stream." And then Mickey's been in Paul tonight.
Oh, hello, Mickey. Yeah, Jason, it was an interesting week for the Heat. I think you were being harsh on your lads. Another night you score 3 or 4 stars just seemed to line for us on the night. Yeah, I mean, I think Gateshead, it's been well known, and we've spoken about the fact they've got Rob Elliott in. They've thrown a bit of money at trying to recruit players. Rob Elliott's a good pull for anyone who wants to come and play because of the way that they have played before and the success they had under him. So, I think looking at what Rob Elliott is potentially going to do and get them out of the relegation places, it's an excellent job. And they're probably in a slightly false position with the squad they've got now. And that reflects in that, I can honestly say I didn't think they would beat York. I don't think many would, no disrespect to Gateshead, but, Gateshead at home, York at home is a different proposition the week after Wealdstone at home, as an example. So, but they thoroughly deserved it by all accounts. York weren't at the races. Gateshead took advantage. There's not many teams will score 3 goals against York, Luke. Not many teams will score that many goals against York this season. So one of those ones that York have to take on the chin and bounce back against Woking on the weekend. Not too badly hurt because of the result that Rochdale picked up. And that was always going to be a tough one for the Dale as well. So, there's going to be a few twists and turns in the next 6-7 games.
We've had Heed Army who's in and said, "Good evening, lads. Welcome to the stream as well." He'll also be buzzing after Tuesday night. And then we've had Ben in, of course, a Rochdale fan. "Evening, gents. This title race is going to kill me off." Yeah, to be fair, it sounds nice being in that position, which it is overall. But then again, just the pressure on both of those sides is just enormous, particularly when you know what could potentially face you if you don't go on to win the title. And of course, this man is here tonight. I didn't expect him not to turn up after Tuesday night. What happened on Tuesday night, Luke, with a combination of the Halifax strong form and the Carlisle leaky defence? I didn't see that one coming, did you? To be honest, no. I don't know I'm guessing you did see the game. I don't know what your take was on it. Maybe I am being biased. From my perspective, I thought what surprised me was Carlisle were very strong defensively, which they haven't been throughout the season. There were no individual errors on the night, and they took their opportunity and scored. But I think over the 90 minutes, I was really impressed with Halifax out of the two, if I'm being brutally honest, overall. And then we've also had Tech God who said, "I want Scunthorpe to win because I want my team to stay in playoffs. Of course, that's a Southend supporter. And then Chris is in, of course, the Scunthorpe fan. I saw his comment. Luke, I don't rate Scunthorpe. Walsh. I'll accept that one, to be fair. Someone said Hartlepool for the playoffs. And then we've also had Twins own, I believe, is coming as well, Paul.
Yeah, Rob Elliott, manager of the season. If Gateshead stay up, listen, it's a good shout. It's similar to Graham Coughlin, wasn't it, at Boston last year? The miracle that they sort of produced from Christmas onwards. I think, unfortunately, the problem is that they're not going to vote someone like Rob Elliott as manager of the year. I think we would all probably agree that should be the case. You know, someone like him should win it. But it's likely to be Stuart Maynard, Jim McNulty, whoever might go up through the playoffs. But Rob Elliott is proving his worth at this level. I know he went up to EFL and it didn't quite work out, but he's a good fit for this league and he's a good fit for Gateshead, and Gateshead have done well to lure him back. And he's obviously back enjoying it and doing a fantastic job. And it's good to see Gateshead are a good football club and play good football. They deserve to be in this league, and let's hope that they stay in it and push on again next season.
I find it really hard, to be honest, overall, to how you actually decide who the manager of the season is going to be. Rob Elliott, for example, I think couldn't have done any more at Gateshead from what he's done. It's very similar to the Graham Coughlin situation of last season, of what he's done with Gateshead. And of course, he's not kept them up yet. They're still 20th. We know this league well enough that things can just turn like that. But, at the moment, particularly when you look at their final run-in as well, most people, including myself, will now back them to stay up, and they deserve an enormous amount of credit for that. But then you have to look at managers like Luke Garrard, who first season back in the National League, Boreham would have an opportunity to potentially finish in the top 3. You've got, of course, Scunthorpe's manager Andy Butler, who once again probably has one of the lower budgets in the league there. More or less confirmed for the playoffs. And you've got Adam Lakeland as well of Halifax, first season as Halifax manager. Halifax, once again, probably a bottom 6 budget in this league, and they're within a shot of the playoffs. But, you say all those, but then I don't think you could potentially say just because these managers have got good budgets to work with, that you couldn't rule these out in terms of, Jim McNulty as Rochdale and Stuart Maynard as York manager. They've got huge budgets, don't get me wrong, and should probably be competing for the title like they are doing. But to both likely finish with over 100 points, it's an enormous achievement, in my opinion. So I just find it really hard how someone could actually judge that. I don't know about yourself.
But no, I totally agree with you, Luke. It depends what the criteria is, and it's very subjective. And, I think it's a nice accolade for whoever the manager wins. We won't remember who the manager of the year is next season and the season after. It's how you represent your club in the situation that you're in. And Gateshead fans will certainly turn around and go, Rob Elliott's manager of the year if he keeps them up. Similar to Adam Lakeland at Halifax in terms of the adaptation to the league and getting them in the playoffs. We'll all have an opinion as to who should be it. And I think you're right. It's very difficult to know what the judging criteria is, because you're quite right. Stuart Maynard and Jim McNulty are over 100 points, over 100 goals in York's case as well, and it's going to go and they're going to take it to the last game of the season. There's not many leagues over seasons that the game goes to the last day. They're fortunate in terms of the way it's scheduled that they're playing each other.
Yeah.
It's going to go right down to that last game of the season, almost that, that Wrexham Notts County duel that we saw a few seasons ago. So, they deserve the accolades as well. And do you know what? Yeah, I think most, if not all of the managers do, because it's a tough league to get out of.
Andy Peaks as well. We haven't mentioned him. Tamworth manager. He's under the radar, don't he, for what he's done for a second season. Yeah,
exactly that. And it's one of the most difficult leagues to get out of, because if 4 can go down, which is the most, I think, apart from League One, 4 can go down, and then obviously only 1 can go out, as we know. So it's a really tough league, and especially some of those really big old EFL teams and established teams. And I think all the managers do brilliantly, and it's an entertaining league, as we know. And it often goes down to that last week for a lot of places for playoffs, relegation, promotion, automatic promotion. So, all the managers deserve it. And I know it's hard yards for them. It's relentless. So, whoever wins it deserves it, but they all deserve a pat on the back, to be honest.
Yeah, I think by the end of the season, maybe a little bit, well, I don't even know if it would actually be easier by the end of the season to pick it. But of course, when we do a kind of end of season show, we will pick one each. But I think probably 5 or 6 managers, to be honest, deserve it come the end of the season. Then we've also had Halifax v Scunthorpe will be a tough one to call. If Scunthorpe turn up, it'll be a thrashing, but we're so unpredictable. You say that, to be fair, and once again, it's probably the biasly from me, but that is a really tough one to call. I can't see either side thrashing each other, if that makes sense, on that one. I think it'll be a really close game, and I could see it going either way for that one. Hopefully a big away following from us at Halifax. Yeah, I was on Scunthorpe's podcast earlier today, and I know they're mentioning that I think I think potentially their closest game alongside York. So it's quite a big occasion because obviously it's a good away day at Halifax as well. So I think Scunthorpe will bring a large amount, and that improves the atmosphere, to be fair, when sides bring a large amount. And then we've also had an Iron fan who said, Luke, how rude we aren't that bad at Scunny for you to not rate us, lol. To be fair, I don't know if I've said that. I think I've just said throughout the season, and I'll hold my hands up, I've been proven wrong. I've just always said I can see Scunthorpe falling out of the playoffs, and yeah, that's not going to happen now, to be fair, is it?
No, listen, we're all entitled to opinions, and you only say what you see, and sometimes it's gut feel, sometimes it's knowledge, and previous experience, etc. But I think Scunthorpe have exceeded all expectations, Luke. We all know a couple of seasons ago, an absolute basket case, weren't they? I think their own fans will admit that. They dropped through the leagues. They've managed to re-establish themselves. It almost felt like this is going to be another one where they could potentially just have to consolidate and just build. And they've really exceeded that. And fair play to them. And there'll be a threat in the playoffs if when they're in there. There'll be a threat, and they deserve it. The league doesn't lie. We'll say that now, between now and the end of the season, a few times. The league doesn't lie. After 40 games, you are where you are because of what's happened over the previous month. So, it's they've done brilliantly, and I suppose they're just going to try and hang on the back of Boreham Wood's coattails and see whether they can get to that 4th spot, because then the advantages of home ties for second and everything else. So, they're going to keep going to the end, and that's a good game for this week, isn't it? Halifax Scunny.
Yeah, it is, in my opinion. I'd probably look at that and say it's probably in the National League the game of the game week. When I look at that, two sides, in and around the playoffs at the moment. And Scunthorpe, like I've said, they deserve an enormous amount of credit for this season. I think from their perspective now, playoffs is more or less certain. Top 3, a little bit optimistic, but you never know. I think from Scunthorpe's perspective, it's just getting momentum for the playoffs, because we know how important, that can be going into a playoff campaign. We've also had Caroline Internet, of course, the Shot supporter. Good evening. Please let us get back to winning. Now, of course, is it 6 defeats on the bounce now? Played a lot of tough teams in there, though, and the only one way you look at that where potentially you'd expect them to get something was working, and that was a derby and could have gone either way. So I'm not overly concerned for the Shots. And then we've had Ethan, of course, a Hartlepool supporter. Evening, fellas. I'm still not over Cam John's clearance off the line last night. I don't know if you saw that, but that was ridiculous. It came on my feed today. And, of course, I think Hartlepool will be looking to potentially sign him in the summer, of course, on loan from York.
No, I didn't see it, but I will seek it out after this show, Luke, and have a watch and see how impressive it was.
We're probably at a point where we can come on. Oh, no, there was one last thing, actually, I was going to ask, and I was going to ask the live chat this as well. Of course, transfers, I think it's deadline day in it for the National League today. ones to report on, there's none that particularly stand out where we have much knowledge on them. A lot of the players, have come from academies today, from what I've seen so far anyway, today. I know Bob, was it Carlisle, they brought in a lad, I think a full-back, haven't they, or on loan, I think, from Bristol City, is it?
Yeah.
I saw that one. The question I want to ask you, Paul, of course, it's kind of over now. If there was one National League player, it can be as unrealistic as you like, for Saturday's FA Trophy semi-final against Marine that you could have to put in the Wealdstone side, who would it be? And I'm going to ask this to the live chat for a player you could have for the rest of the season, and then I'll answer it for Halifax, although that was pretty tough.
Well, do you know what, Luke? The funny thing was, we've got 3 suspended on the weekend. We got Dom Hutchinson, who plays right wing back. We've got Enzo Bolgewine, who plays almost right of the back 3. And we've got Dylan Kadji, who sits in the midfield. So that sort of the right-hand side is decimated on Saturday. So we were all sort of wondering who might play on the right. And I don't know if you've seen the social media this evening. It's unconfirmed at this stage, but it appears that York are loaning Ashley Nathaniel George to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to, if I was to say we need a player, he would be the perfect fit for what we need. Don't get me wrong, we'd all go, we'd love an Ollie Pearce, a Josh Stones, a Con Clark, whoever it may be. But from what Wealdstone need between now and the end of the season, if we were able to get Ashley Nathaniel George in on loan, who was being a real threat in this league with Maidenhead and with Southend and now with York. I know he had a spell at Hartlepool on loan, a bit of an indifferent spell. He is from our neck of the woods. So if he does come down and join us ready for Saturday, then I think, that's the perfect sign-in to complement what we have between now and potentially Wembley. We've got to beat Marine at the weekend. We've got to pick up maybe another 2, 3, 4 points to really be safe. So he can come in and be really useful to us on that sort of right hand side, because we're really lacking someone that's in the Stone side to sort of be that conduit between midfield and the forward areas. Gary Waddock plays 2 up top, which has been a breath of fresh air for our centre forwards. They're not running up there on a lone sort of Farrow, but we didn't really have that Tariq Al-Arakia type player that we've had in the past, the Reece Brown, that type of player. So Nathaniel George potentially could be that missing link. So fingers crossed that comes in, but that would be a perfect addition for us.
Trying to think for me, like obviously there's your kind of flair players that you'd want, but I think if I'm being not realistic in terms of being able to get one of these players, by the way, but if we're being realistic, like who'd actually kind of fit into our system, like I wouldn't want a striker. I think we've got a 20-goal a season strike. I don't think that's the issue, which sounds silly considering, Halifax in the last couple of years. You'd probably have to look at full-back position, maybe. It's quite a tough one for Halifax. There's always upgrades in most positions, but you've got to think where's the weakest you are, and I think we're quite balanced. I'd probably look at someone like Mark Kitchen, to be honest. I rate him really highly. And I think him at fullback, I think would make us a lot stronger defensively as well. I'd love Abdul Malik if he could fit him into the side, but I don't think we really play. You'd have to play in like Himami's position, so it's a really tough one to call, to be honest. When you're thinking of like players that you'd actually put in the side, of course Alex Hunt, but then again we've got a good attacking midfielder in Turner Cook, so it's a bit like is there another area that you'd want to improve? It's really tough for me, but I think if there were one player I could have, it'd be someone like Mark Kitchen or maybe Adebayo Rowling from Rochdale as well. There's loads of good players, I think, across the division who would happily take off a team's hands. We've had a few of you guys who've come in tonight. Mickey, of course, the Heat supporter, said, I'd take Josh Stones for the running. Just to imagine a prolific goal scorer at Gates. I think he'd suit them pretty well, to be fair, if I'm being honest. We've also had Ethan, who said 4 hour running, I'd have to take Zach Grunt. He's played brilliant for Boreham this season. Yeah, that's a good shout, to be fair. I think, Hartlepool, you've got your kind of flair player that you've maybe missed over the course of the season in Tyrese Sinclair. You've got a striker that Alex Reid that's inconsistent, but on his days is prolific. You can't really see you can't. That wouldn't be the area I don't think that you really need to improve on. So an attacking midfielder in the number 10 role would be perfect. I think a lot of people would want Zach Brunt, to be fair, wouldn't they?
Yeah, a very, very good footballer. Boreham would done well to pick him up. Boreham would have actually today have signed a young lad. Josh Landers have signed a lad from West Ham, a centre forward. So I think I saw one of the non-league National League bloggers sort of suggest that the attacking prowess that Boreham have got going into this last month or so of the season is really impressive. So Luke Garrard, he's going for it, and fair play to them.
We've also had, someone's mentioned Joe Felix. Can't even get in on the bench. That's ridiculous. The first half of the season, he was one of the standout players, but the players just keeping him out of the team, aren't they? He's that could be a realistic loan potentially, but I don't know. I think York would still want to keep hold of him because we all know his qualities. And then we've also had Bailey, who, of course, a Tamworth fan. Big up, lads, Tamworth. Big win yesterday. That mauls for us. And Dan is so good, but move on now to Brackley, then Solihull. What we probs lose, they always turn up versus us. Yeah, Tamworth, of course, defeating Forest Green. Another win. They're the giant killers, aren't they, of the division, I suppose. Carlisle, Forest Green. I feel like who else was it? Boreham Wood, that was it. There's three there, and there's probably a few others that I can't think of off the top of my head as well. Massive credit to Tamworth, and of course we spoke about Andy Peaks and the good job he's done. You'd have to say he's a contender as well.
Yeah, 100%. When we interviewed him, Luke, he was very honest in what their expectations were and how he goes about trying to win football matches. And we all sort of know that it's different to a lot of other teams. They're very industrial and direct and play to their strengths. And one of their strengths is they don't give up, and they didn't do that last night. Was it the 90th minute they scored the winner? And and it's sometimes you can't buy desire, and you can't buy energy and the will to win. And Tamworth have clearly got that in abundance. They might not have as much skill and as much technical ability as some other teams, but you're going to always give anyone a good game if you put 100% in for 90 odd minutes. So, and they clearly do that, and they've reaped their rewards by getting yet another win against a big side last night.
Probably a point now where we will actually come on to the predictions for the game week. For those that weren't joining us earlier, I'm going to quickly put the scores on for you guys to have a look at. These are the current scores at the moment. I can get them up here. I think, what was it? 10-8, wasn't it, last game?
Yeah.
So I'll just load it up here. So, of course, I think if I'm correct in saying, I believe that you are 3 points to the good at the moment. Of course, I think that's 3 weeks in a row that you've actually defeated me on the actual predictions, Paul. So, a good couple of weeks for you.
Yeah. I can't take credit for the week before, Luke, because obviously I wasn't here. I was helped out there, but I'll take the credit for this week, getting 10 points and nicking another 2 from you. So 3-point gap now going into this week. We've not got quite a full card, but enough games here to sort of rack up some points if we can.
Of course, to everyone that is watching as well, please remember to like and subscribe. It genuinely does go a long way if you can do that. We're trying to get to 3,000 subscribers by the end of the season. So if you can do that, you'd be doing us a massive favour. If you haven't already, I know a lot of you guys already will have subscribed too. I think we're at a point now where the scores should be on. Maybe not the National League, but they're the scores. If anyone's bothered about the other results going on this game week, let's search the National League up anyway, and hopefully we should be ready to go. I think the first game that we're going to be previewing, if the fixtures are up, will be, I think, Brackley versus Tamworth, I believe. How do you see that one going?
It's not going to be a classic, Luke, is it?
It's not the most attractive game, to be fair.
I mean, there's way more on the game for Brackley than there is Tamworth. As we know, Tamworth are safe. They're not likely to. They're not going to be challenging at the top end of the table for the playoffs, and there's a lot more in on it for Brackley. But Brackley are just on a wretched run of form at the moment, and they are at home. They don't score lots of goals. I've gone with a Tamworth 1-0 win. I just can't see it being particularly exciting, particularly good. No, now like it'll be like 4-4 or something now. But I think Tamworth will win 1-0.
It's one of them where it kind of screams a draw, but then you look at Brackley's form, they're not scoring goals at the moment. They're probably on the worst form they've been on all season. They've tried to experiment with a new manager who's, I feel, from my perspective, changed their actual principles that have put them in the position they're in now. I think if they were to change it how they have done up, they should have waited till the summer. And of course, it's all in hindsight now. And you have to say, Brackley look doomed. And you look at their form, they're so out of form at the moment against Tamworth, who will be high on confidence after defeating Forest Green in midweek. I'm going to have to back Tamworth to win this. I'm going to go for a 2-0 Tamworth win. We'll move on to the next game, which is going to be Braintree versus Carlisle. Put your predictions in as well, guys. We will put them on the screen and see what you guys have been saying too. The next game that we're going to have a look at is Braintree versus Carlisle. I kind of gather that we'll both be going one way with this one. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, to be honest. I've gone 1-0 Carlisle. I don't think it's going to be a thrashing for Carlisle, but as for Braintree, I think the midweek fixture against Brackley was damaging. I think for both sides. I think you look at the opponent you're playing aside around you in the relegation battle, and for neither side to pick all 3 points up. I think it shows to me that both are likely going to go down. I don't think either side have got enough. Braintree, a very thin squad, haven't particularly strengthened. Brackley out of form. So I think those two are down for me. And they're coming up against Carlisle, who were very strong defensively. I will give them the credit. I didn't think I'd be saying this after Tuesday away at Halifax. And I could see them winning again, 1-0. How do you see it going?
Yeah, I've gone with a 3-0 Carlisle win. I think compounded the fact that Braintree and Brackley drew each other, or against each other rather, there's not a chance they would have thought that Gateshead were going to get nicked 3 points out of York on the same evening, Luke. And all of a sudden, Gateshead are now 2 points above Brackley, 5 above Braintree. They can't. They must have come off. They must have come off of their disappointment. They've only got a draw out of the game, and then see that result. It must seem what a nightmare. So apologies there. So
so it's past 9 p.m. So that's why we do it.
I could just imagine it, thinking it's just an absolute kick in the whatsits. In terms of not being able to pick up a result against someone you think you should, and then see that. So listen, I'm with you, Luke. I can't see Braintree or Brackley doing enough now with 6 games to go, and the last thing Braintree needs to be doing is playing a team like Carlisle, because like we just said, those teams in the playoffs are now going to try and start taking advantage of having home ties second and home advantage and everything else. So 3-0 to Carlisle, and it's going to be a tough six more games for Braintree, I think.
I think their time in the National League is coming to an end. Just some of the fixtures they've got coming up. Of course, Carlisle on Saturday, followed by Southend. Then playing an informed Woking at the moment. It may have changed by then. Forest Green, Rochdale following that, and then Tamworth on the final day. That's a horrible set of fixtures. And you look at the previous couple. Morecambe, Wealdstone, Gateshead, Brackley. Aldershot, Truro, those are the games where you've got to be picking the points up. And I think in those games, they're winless. They picked up one win, which is, of course, was against bottom of the league, Truro. So for me, Braintree, I think they're gone, to be honest. I think they'll be the next to go to be confirmed alongside Truro. Of course, I don't think either's mathematically confirmed yet, but I'm sure both will in the coming weeks. Next fixture that we'll be taking a look at is going to be Eastleigh versus Forest Green Rovers. Forest Green losing in midweek. I was doing my calculations earlier before this podcast, and I've noticed that since January, in Forest Green's last 15 matches, they've picked up just 14 points, which isn't particularly, I suppose, good to see as a side that's wanting to finish in the playoffs this season. I think that first half of the season is the reason that they're still within the playoffs. Do you think based on that form that they're actually catchable when you look at the remaining fixtures? Of course, 6 points above Halifax at the moment.
You've got to think they're catchable. I mean, the South End could probably catch them because they've got those games in hand. Halifax, I think, and Hartlepool are probably too far behind. South End have got to be looking at them going, right, these are who we got to sort of overtake next. It really depends on what the Forest Green's form is going to be like. I mean, you say they've got 14 points out of 15 games. Well, 9 of those have come in the last 9 points of those come in the last 5. So it shows how poor it was previously. So they picked up a little bit of form in terms of wins there, Forest Green. They would have been gutted about losing to Tamworth. They would have expected to at least get a point out of that, especially in that last minute. And then they lose to South End, and that sort of thing will happen. But I think you're right. Forest Green are catchable for South End's perspective. They can only affect what they can affect in terms of Forest Green now. They're 6 points behind Scunthorpe. Scunthorpe are on a decent run. So I think Forest Green are now just got, Robbie Savage and his team have just got to say, right, we need to keep this 6th spot here. Worst thing is we hit 7th, but I think they'll be all right. I've got them down to win 2-0 at the weekend, Luke, against Eastleigh. Eastleigh, I don't think they're going to go down, but boy, 42 points. They're only 4 points behind, and they've only won 1 in the last 5. So, are they potentially that 4th from bottom team? Who knows? So I can't see them winning against Forest Green, though.
Yeah, Eastleigh, they'll be looking over their shoulders. We know how quickly it can change. In the National League, sides getting dragged into it. There's still, 6 games to go from their perspective. Gateshead just 2 points behind. I think you spoke about that a couple of months ago, and I think Gateshead will be probably double digits behind them, and that kind of shows how quickly the National League can change. Just 2 wins in 9 as well for Eastleigh, and they came against Truro and Brackley, who are both currently in the bottom 4. I think Forest Green will win still. I'm going to go 2-1 to Forest Green. I can't see Eastleigh beating Forest Green. And with the financial issues they're having at the moment, it's not good. I think they just want this season to end and hope that they can sort everything out in the summer, because, at the moment, it's looking a little bit bleak for them. I just think potentially the 4 below them, and it can change very quickly. I think Brackley are only 4 points behind, but they're only going one way for me. Braintree are then 7 points behind. I can't see them doing all, to be honest, with 6 games. And then Morecambe are 8 points behind. And, people would say Morecambe, but 8 points with only 6 games remaining is very tough to catch any side, to be honest. Even if Eastleigh didn't pick up any points, it's not guaranteed Morecambe would actually get more than 8 points until the end of the season when you look at the running. So for me, I think Eastleigh will be fine because of the bottom 4, to be honest. I think there's too much of a gap now, but we know it can change quickly in the National League. Next game then, of course, the game of the game week, potentially. Halifax versus Scunthorpe. A huge game for Halifax, particularly, I feel. Particularly after Tuesday, we were saying off air that it's a must-win, I think, for Halifax if they want to finish in the playoffs. If they lose this, South End would have 3 games in hand on them. Being a point, being level on points, but with goal difference as well. And there'd only be 5 games remaining as well for Halifax. So I think it'd be tough for them to catch them. Hartlepool then would have 2 games in hand with just 2 points behind. You'd expect them to win 1 and 2. So, for Halifax, this could be their last chance, I think, for playoffs this season. And although they've been on brilliant form, a defeat in Tuesday night, has certainly put them as outsiders, I think, now, and unless they win this game. I think for the pressure on it, I think Halifax need to win, and I think I'd be silly to not back my own team. Scunthorpe, as I say, I don't rate them. No, I'm only joking. I think it's, we can't discredit them, but I do think being at home, I do back us. I think we're playing very well. I think any other night would have got something against Carlisle, to be honest. And, you know, the stakes are so high for us. Scunthorpe have more or less confirmed playoffs. I'm going to have to back my own team. I'm going to go 2-1 to Halifax. I think it'll be a really tight game, and I really hope that we get all 3 points. How do you see it going? Please back Scunthorpe.
I've gone with a 2-2 draw, Luke.
All right, well, that's okay, I suppose.
I think game of the week. I think it'll be a good. I'm not sure it'll be that open because I don't think either team will want to lose. But both teams are a threat, aren't they? They can score goals, but they can defend, and there's a lot riding on it for both teams just to consolidate, or with Halifax especially just trying to push on, because when you look at Southend, have got Yeovil as a game in hand. Hartlepool, one of their games in hand is Wealdstone. I haven't been able to check the others. So they're winnable games in hand. So I think you're right. Halifax have to really put the pressure on both of them not playing at the weekend by winning and just getting points on the board. I think that's the important thing, getting points on the board. Games in hand are fine, but you've got to win them. And we've seen the likes of Rochdale haven't won theirs, as an example, necessarily. So points on the board just puts pressure back on the other team. So I think you're right. Halifax being at home as well, they've got to be the ones that play on the front foot a bit more, I think. And but it'd be a good game. But 2-2, got a gut feel for 2-2.
Yeah, if I was, I'm not a neutral, I'm a Halifax supporter, but it'd definitely be the one that I'd be tuning into if I was a neutral looking at a game, this one, because, I think it'll be a really good game. To be fair, between two sides that have certainly overachieved this season, no matter what happens from this position now. But yeah, I've got to back Halifax for this one, to be fair. And I know Scunthorpe in recent weeks defensively have been a little bit weak. The pairing, I suppose, at the back, or the three at the back. You've got a 36-year-old in Andrew Boyce, and has received a lot of criticism at the moment. And we've got a bit of pace in behind, so hopefully we can exploit that. Moving on to the next game that we'll take a look at, Gateshead versus Yeovil. And Gateshead deserve loads of credit after finally climbing outside of the relegation zone. As for Yeovil, they've picked up a few good results. Of course, 2 wins on the bounce now, which has seen them climb away from the drop zone and not be involved in a relegation battle. I think one more win for Yeovil would more or less confirm safety for next season. As for Gateshead, they've still got a lot of work to do, but you'd have to back them to go on to survive now. I think it'll be quite an entertaining one. I think Gateshead capable of scoring goals. To be fair to Yeovil, I think they've scored more goals than in the second half of the season than what we've seen for a long time with them. I'm going to go 3-2 to Gateshead though for this one, being on home turf. They'll be on a high after the York result as well. How do you see it going?
I've gone with 2-0 to Gateshead. I saw Yeovil in the week, or last night rather, played down at the Vale against Wealdstone. It was a bit of a strange game, Luke, because it felt like both teams knew they weren't potentially going to get relegated. It genuinely felt like Wealdstone had their minds on Saturday. Yeovil were very, efficient and defended well. They went down to 10 men. Probably with about half an hour to go and defended well in that last half an hour with a bit of pressure from Wealdstone, but the quality was lacking from the Stones perspective. But I think Heed will have to give them more problems than Wealdstone did, and they will. And they're, like you said, they're going to be buoyed from the fact that they did so convincingly beat York in the week as well. So I think, the momentum is with them, even though Yeovil have got the last 2 wins. There's more on it for Gateshead, and I think that will be what matters come Saturday, and I think the Heed will win 2-0.
Next fixture, Morecambe versus Aldershot. Morecambe, I think, have really messed up, I have to say, in the last couple of weeks. After it was always going to be an uphill battle, I think, ever since Jim Bentley came in to be able to survive. They probably had to do something very similar to Gateshead and what they've done. And, of course, they haven't in the end with the last couple of weeks against opponents that I think they had to beat, just 1 point from the last 3 games against Braintree, Yeovil, and Hartlepool. I look at those, and I know Hartlepool are chasing playoffs, but being at home, Morecambe, after having a bit of momentum after defeating Sutton, I thought they'd done better than what they had done. And I just think that must be so deflating, losing to Hartlepool how they did. Very similar to how Rochdale were, in control, 2-1 up, and they just let it slip. They just turned off, and Alex Reid with 2 goals for Hartlepool saw them defeat them on home turf, and I think it's going to be an uphill battle if Morecambe are to survive now. This is probably on paper, well, it is on paper their easiest game. After this, they've got Rochdale, Carlisle, Woking, Boreham and Forest Green. So, in the final 6 games, they've got to play 4 of the top 7, including top of the league Rochdale. So, you can't ask for tougher fixtures than that, to be honest. Do you think mentally it'll have an impact, looking at them, probably knowing now that it's unlikely they're going to survive going into this one? Or do you think under someone like Jim Bentley, you'd expect a reaction against Aldershot, who, of course, have lost 6 on the bounce?
It's a really tough one, Luke, because, the problem with Morecambe, it appears, is that they can score goals, but they let goals in. So it's just, if winning 5-0, then losing 3-2, then winning 3-2, winning 5-0, losing 3-2, drawing 1-1, losing 3-2. Just you can't expect to win games if you're letting 3 goals a game in. You've got to keep that down, and when they have, they've won the game. They've had such a roller coaster ride, haven't they? And Jim Bentley's done fantastic well to sort of pull them up and put them in with a bit of a shout and a fight. But Aldershot are capable of letting goals in, but they're very good at scoring as well. And I think Morecambe's just got to look at shots and think, could they be dragged into it? I don't think they will, but they are on a wretched run of form. As Caroline said, they just want to win. They had that brilliant run, last month or 6 weeks ago, and since then they've had a wretched run. So this could be this could be like a cricket score either way, because they both let goals in, both score. I've gone with shots to win 3-2 actually, because 3 of the last 5 games has included a 3-2 scoreline for Morecambe, so I'm going to go with that one again, but I'm going to put it in shots favour though.
I've gone 3-1 to Aldershot for this one. Like I mentioned with Morecambe, I just think the last 3 games they've kind of messed up. I think, to be honest, when you look at those, if they wanted to survive, they needed an enormous amount of momentum, and now they've probably got to more or less win probably 4, maybe even 5 of the last 6 to survive, and they've got to play 4 of the last top 7. I just think, for any side to do that, I think that's a really tough ask. I know stranger things have happened, but I can't see it. And I think Aldershot, I don't think they've played particularly badly in any of their defeats. They've not been thrashed against any of the top 7. And I think they're due a win, if I'm being honest, when I look at their last couple of results. And I think they'll win this one, particularly against quite a weak Morecambe defence. I'm going to go 3-1 to Aldershot. Next game then, potentially not a thriller as such. Solihull, though, still needing they need to find a win to avoid them having a bit of a nervy end to the season. They're not in form at all. They're coming up against an Altrincham side, though, who've had a couple of good results, picking a point up against Boston, of course, defeating Southend prior to that as well. But for Solihull, it's no wins in 10. I think Solihull need a win more than Altrincham at the moment, but it just screams a draw, this one. I'm going to go 1-1. How do you see it going?
I've gone with Alty winning 1-0. A bit like you, Luke. They're not. Again, it's not the most favourable game of the game week. I suppose the sort of carrot for Solihull is if they win, they'll go above Altrincham. All of a sudden they'll be. They potentially could be mid-table rather than looking over their shoulders at the bottom 5. So I think they're both okay, purely like we said, because of the bottom 4. They've got 6 games left, and they've all got to win probably 4 or 5 of those, and they've hardly won 4 or 5 the whole season. So potentially nothing on this apart from a bit of pride, but it just that security of getting 3 more points just brings them mid-table. But yeah, Altrincham to win 1-0 just because their form is that little bit better.
I think for Solihull, winless in 10, you have to say, they've gone from being a side, knocking on the door for the playoffs. So I'll actually admit it. I had them as outsiders to actually finish in January. I thought out of, Solihull, Halifax, Hartlepool and Woking, they were the 4 that people felt may be able to catch the top 7 at the time, which was still outside shot. I thought Solihull were probably the side that would. And of course, I've got a bit of egg on my face at the moment, but they're winless in 10. They're probably going to need about 5 points from the last 6-7 games to survive. So they need to find wins out of somewhere at the moment. They've got a reasonable run to the end of the season. So from their perspective, hopefully they can do it. But I think it'll be a draw for this one. Next game, the final 2 games, I believe. Sutton.
No, 3.
3. What game have we missed?
Sutton Rochdale, Truro, Boreham Wood, York, Woking.
Truro, Boreham Wood. Let's go there then. Truro versus Boreham Wood. Truro more or less down. They picked up a good result at the weekend, and then in midweek they got a point against Solihull. I still got to back Boreham Wood for this one. I'll probably go 2-0 Boreham Wood. How do you see it going?
I've gone 4-0 Boreham Wood. I think they've got so much to play for. They're back on. They've got back on the horse, if you like, after that blip that they had a couple of weeks ago. And they're going to be all guns blazing. I think they're doing well, and just signed that lad, just signed a lad from West Ham just to help boost their forward line. Not that they need it. They've already scored 82 goals this season. What's that, the second most or third most? The second most in the league. So, they'll. I think they could run rampant against Truro. As I say, Truro aren't mathematically down, but they've been down for a long time in reality of it. So, yeah, Boreham Wood to win 4-0.
The final 2 fixtures then. So we start things off with Rochdale versus Sutton. Or Sutton versus Rochdale, I should say. I'm going to be really controversial. Not controversial, that's the wrong word. I'm going to be unpredictable, I suppose. I think Sutton win this one, but it really depends which Sutton turn up. I'm not. Rochdale fans are going to absolutely hate me. I want to point York. Sutton have got a point against York this season. In the top 7 and 8, they've defeated Scunthorpe, Halifax, Carlisle, and they've drawn against Forest Green. They've defeated Hartlepool as well, who are currently 9th. I think this is a really, really tough game. And when I've seen Sutton play on a good day, they are a side that will be knocking on the door in the playoffs. And I genuinely mean that. They've just been so inconsistent throughout the season with their results. I think they were a very good side. I actually think, and I'm very shocked out of all the sides that they're in the position they are when I look at their squad and what they're capable on their day. And Rochdale, I think they've just shown a few signs of vulnerability, particularly when maybe not coasting in games, but when they've got a comfortable 2-0 lead. We've seen it against Halifax. We've now seen it against Scunthorpe. There was another game as well that's gone out of the back of my head where they were leading 1-0 and they dropped points. Was it Yeovil? No, I think they got an equaliser for Yeovil. So, there's a few signs defensively for me where I think they're a little bit vulnerable. If we are to speak about any, I suppose, vulnerabilities about any of the top 2, to be honest. I see Sutton winning this one. I think they're a good side. Go on.
A compelling argument, Luke. I can see exactly where you're coming from. From Sutton's perspective, they've just lost Kai Jennings and Osman Foyo back to AFC Wimbledon. Now, Kai Jennings since he's come in loan from AFC Wimbledon, I think he's been one of their star player. So that might affect them. They have just signed Danny Cashman on loan from Crawley, Sutton, who worked with Chris Agatura at Worthing, and he's a good technical footballer, plays in the 10 role. He might replace Kai Jennings a bit. I get where you're coming from in terms of Rochdale slipping up, and the pressure is going to be on. It is York are looking at trying to beat Woking at home, and they'll be looking at each other's results at 5 o'clock when they get in the change rooms. I just can't see Sutton winning this, Luke. And I've gone with Rochdale to win 3-1, but I don't think it will be easy. But I just think Rochdale have got too much to lose, and they're going to be going for it.
Mark my words, I don't know why, but I'm very confident that Sutton are going to at least get something out of this game. I don't know why. I'm just very impressed with Sutton overall. And I'm not saying I'm not impressed with Rochdale, because they're on course to get 100 points, but I just think there's going to be twists and turns until the end of the season. And of course, that's going to bring us on to the last game, York versus Woking. Do you want to go first?
3-1 to York. I think they need a response, right, after the midweek. They'll know they probably haven't performed like they should. They know they've probably got away with it a little bit with Rochdale dropping 3 points late on against Scunny. So they know that they're back in the title race. If they listen to your argument, they know Rochdale are in for a tough time at Sutton. So they've got to go and win. And Woking are on a good run. 100% they're on a good run, but they're beatable. And the way that York can play, especially at home, they'll get the goals. And I think York will win 3-1, the same as Rochdale.
People are going to think I'm just doing this on purpose, just to, and I'm not. Right, I've gone for a 2-2 draw for this one. I can't see Woking winning by any stretch. But Woking come into this, and you've got to find your facts for this, to be fair. And even both arguments, probably people will argue something else on it, that both sides on for 100 points. So how can you back against them ever? But Woking come into this unbeaten in 7 under new management. I see it as a free hit for Woking. Woking as well have got the 7th best away record in the league. So they've been a lot better away from home than what they've been at home throughout the whole season. And as I keep saying, there's going to be lots of twists and turns until the end of the season. I think now, a side like Gateshead have proven that they can beat York. People will probably look at York and think, yep, they're a beatable side. To some extent, I'll say that. And what people have got to realise with these two now, whenever sides are coming up against your side, the opponents will raise the game because they want to beat you so much. And this is the same with Woking. They're not going to want to end their unbeaten run under new management. So I've just got a feeling. I think this could be a draw, to be fair. I know York all season have been exceptional at home. Was the last home game they lost, I think, Scunthorpe, but I can see this being a draw as well. I just think there's going to be lots of twists and turns, and people are just going to say it's been controversial for the sake of it, but I'm not. Like, the odds are against both of these, but my gut instincts, more than anything, to be honest, backed up by the points I've made, I've just got a feeling that both sides are going to drop points once again this game week. I just think it's such a National League thing to happen. And, I think it's worth putting a bet on, to be honest, overall. I know both will be wanting to respond after midweek as well. I know a few people have commented on that. Yeah.
No, listen, fair dues and well argued, I think, Luke, and you may well be right. Like you said, there's still twists and turns. It'll be the very National League thing to do. Lee said, "Luca, you're drunk." It's well, we'll see. We'll see at 5 o'clock on Saturday, right? We'll see what's occurring. Be interesting to sort of debate this next Thursday after we've seen the what's going on, what will happen. But fair play. They're bold moves, Luke. And I can see your argument for it.
Even if both sides win, I can tell you this now. I'm very, very confident that it won't be easy games. I think both are going to be really awkward, tricky games for both sides. And if they both come through it, then fair dues. That I will give them a lot of credit for this. But Woking and Sutton, I think they're both playing these sides at bad time. There's statistics to that Woking and Sutton can both go on that will give them confidence going into this game. Sutton, as I've mentioned, very good record against the top 9 this season in the league. They've slipped up against the weaker side. They've got a point against York this season. They've beaten the likes of Carlisle, Forest Green. They've beaten Halifax, drew away to Halifax as well, beat Hartlepool. And then even this one, Woking, like I've mentioned, the reverse fixture, I know it was under Hinchelwood at the time, but the reverse fixture, Woking got a point against York. So for me, overall, I don't think these are easy games at all for either side. I think they're two very tricky games. And I think it is worth mentioning until the end of the season now, both sides, particularly now Rochdale have got Scunthorpe and Southend out of the way. They both have very similar run-ins. And something I do want to ask you before the end of the podcast, I want to ask you which running you would prefer out of these two sides, if I can get them up here. Dale, until the end of the season, right? These are their remaining games. They're starting things off, of course, against Sutton away from home. They then got Morecambe, followed by Hartlepool, Wealdstone, Braintree, and York. So they've got. They've both got each other to play. So they've got Sutton to play, who, of course, are on good form at the moment. They've got Morecambe and Braintree, who will be looking to survive. So they could be awkward games. But I think, to be honest, particularly the Braintree game, I expect them to be down by that point. And they've also got Hartlepool away, which is probably out of those games by York is their toughest fixture, because they'll be knocking on the door for the playoffs. As for York, York's running until the end of the season. So they've got Woking on Saturday, followed by Boston, then Altrincham, then Tamworth. All three of those sides don't particularly have much to play for. And then Yeovil on the final day, who I don't think will have anything to play for either. Not the final day, but the day before the York game. Which out of those two runnings, who would you say has got not the easier actually, which running would you prefer, I suppose?
I think definitely York's, Luke, because you sort of alluded to it really. Sutton and Woking both not really got too much to play for, their first games. But then Rochdale play Morecambe at a point where Morecambe probably could still feel like they can get out of it. They were playing Morecambe where they're playing Braintree, it might be a different matter. Hartlepool, like you said, could be getting in it. Wealdstone won't have much to play for. May have Wembley to consider. So it depends. Players will want to be playing to try and get in that team. Who knows? Braintree will be down by then. Whereas York, they're playing 5 teams out of the 6 that are probably already on the beach. Mm-hmm. Playing for a bit of pride. That's for contracts for next season. All those things we can talk about. So I think I would probably prefer York's running as it stands because of what's on the table for the teams that they'll have to play.
It's interesting you say that. I think the thing that's kind of swinging me towards York's running is the Hartlepool away game for Dale. I see that as a really tricky one. York, when you look at their running, they're playing mostly mid-table teams with not much to play for. Both are similar, but I think by the point York are playing a lot as well, that they're going to not have anything to play for. And at this stage of the season, I know it can work both ways. You can say players are playing for contracts and stuff, but there's this term in there that, you're on the beach. And I think a lot of those sides will be when they face York. Dale, the ones that stand out are Morecambe and Braintree, which are often tricky at this stage of the season when you're playing against sides that are looking to survive. But Morecambe potentially, but I think if they lose to Aldershot, I think they'll be more or less joining the others in more or less being down. And as for Braintree, I'm not too confident that they're going to be, within a shout of staying up with the second to last game. So I could see Dale's running being fairly easy-ish, but that Hartlepool game just stands out to me that makes it probably slightly trickier. But I think both are very similar, and this is why I feel overall now, and I really, really hope it does for the neutral, go down to the final day. Would you be backing that? Do you think it will? Or
I think it will, yeah. I mean, there's no reason to say it won't, Luke. They've almost been neck and neck, for the last couple of months anyway. I know Dale was slightly ahead with games in hand, but it's they both deserve to go into that game with a chance of getting promoted. I think, as you say, they both get over 100 points, over 100 goals for York. It will be close to that for Rochdale. I think the league deserves a fixture like that on the last day of the season. And the scheduling has worked wonders in that sense. And it will be a real showcase for the league as well as for those teams, because however many York, I think, is it at York or Rochdale? It's at Rochdale, isn't it?
It's at Rochdale, but
yeah, Rochdale.
I tell you, they have gone as well. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, what holds 8, 10, 12,000, it will be packed to the rafters. There won't be a ticket spare. So it should be a real occasion, a real good occasion.
Yeah, I think it will as well. I don't know if you've seen today, but I don't know if you've done Rochdale away, but they put you down the side. And there's, an option to give, I think 3,000 away fans. I think they usually restrict it, to be fair, but there has been before that many. Well, they've actually given York a very much reduced allocation. And I know York fans were kicking off thinking, well, why can't we have more? Why can't you let us have more? To be fair, from Rochdale's perspective, I see totally why they wouldn't. One, because of course, you want to have as limited York fans in the stadium as possible, so you can really keep it as, have the Rochdale fans behind them. But then also, what they've announced today, I believe, is that they're actually putting Rochdale fans in the away end, a section down the side, which I think is brilliant, to be honest. I think, it's going to be a massive occasion. Someone's mentioned the home game is sold out, which is a shame for those who are neutrals. But then again, it's not, because, I think it's rightfully so that Rochdale and York fans are the ones who get to attend. But no, that is going to be a cracker. I really hope now, with the anticipation, that it does end up going down to the final day.
Yeah, let's hope it does, Luke. It might not. Results might swing either way, and there'll be a clear winner by the time that game comes around. But as a neutral, I'd like to see it. As a York fan or a Rochdale fan, they're not wanting to see that. They want to know that their team's already promoted. So there won't be many nails left at the end of the sort of day on the 25th of April. It should be an absolute cracker. I'm looking forward to that weekend. I'm looking forward to the fact that Wealdstone probably won't have to be winning on the last day of the season to go up. So can kind of enjoy the other results and games as well as ours. So, and this is definitely one that will be, I should imagine everyone will be looking at through their social media accounts and sort of their score apps and everything else. So, yeah, fair enough. I hope it goes that far as a neutral, but as a York or Dale fan, I wouldn't want to be waiting to that game.
Nah, I wouldn't either. Someone's mentioned they should move it to the Etihad. There'd be more chance of them actually filling it, to be honest, those two sides, than Manchester City, to be fair. And, it'd be a good advert for the National League now. I think it should be at Rochdale's ground overall. But no, Paul, it's more or less wraps it up. Of course, good luck on Saturday. I will be there for that game. It should be an absolute cracker, that FA Trophy semi-final. The reason I'm not at the Scunny game as well, I'm down in London anyway, so it made sense to have the opportunity to go over to Wealdstone for that one. Of course, England are in action tomorrow night, and of course, we'll both be attending that one as well.
Yeah, both at Wembley tomorrow night, Luke, for the first of the two warm-up games that Thomas Tuchel has got to pick his final World Cup squad. And then, down to the Vale on Saturday for you to enjoy it as a neutral, whereas I suppose I've got to enjoy it as a neutral. I'm commentating, and Marina having a live feed of the game into their clubhouse. So I can't be too biased on the weekend. I've got to be very neutral and balanced, which I do try to be, but, hopefully emotions won't get the better of me if it's going Wealdstone's way.
Yeah, to be fair, I remember that Barnet game, to be fair, the commentary there when you won in the last minute. But I suppose Barnet's a bit of an exception, isn't it, overall, when you guys face them. I just want to say as well, before we bring things to a close, I've got an idea for the forfeit for the Predictions League. And as I'm losing, it's a good opportunity for me to kind of bring it to the table, right? So that there's none of this like, oh, you're winning, that's why you're doing it. What I'm thinking, I don't know what the comments think or anything on this, I'm thinking we have to wear our rival team's shirt. So it could either be York again or I can wear Rochdale one. I don't know which. Probably Rochdale this year because they all seem to think I hate them. And for you, it would obviously be Barnet probably again, although they're in League Two. What's the thoughts on having, like, getting one of our mates or something to put a massive tub of like icy water over our heads wearing what do you call it, shirt? What's your thoughts on that? And then we have to post it on Twitter.
Listen, mate, I'll be up for. I've got 2 kids here who would happily dump a load of ice bucket water over the top of me in a Barnet shirt. So yeah, I'm game. I'll do that. No problem at all.
Brilliant, it's on then. So good luck to everyone this weekend. Good luck to yourself, Paul, and also good luck to Southend as well. We're hoping that they can make the final as well as a National League side, and hopefully, from my perspective, Halifax can win. Thanks to everyone that's tuned in, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.